With Super Bowl 60 now officially in the books, you can officially put a wrap and a bow on the 25-26 season as the Seattle Seahawks were able to take the championship over the Patriots, as the Panthers have been in full swing off-season mode for nearly a month, as is most of the rest of the league. But with the new fiscal year just under a month away, and the scouting combine a couple of weeks, the question begs, with certain situations that were solved in 2025-26, could the new weaknesses for the Carolina Panthers finally be resolved? Some would say they're the same old issues. But how the Panthers choose to answer these questions, whether it be free agency or the draft, remains to be seen. But the biggest question plaguing the Carolina Panthers, do they have an honest, scary, deep threat? And if so, will they acknowledge it and use it? Or will they dig into free agency or the draft? This story and many more on this edition of Growlin' and Prowlin'. Welcome back, Growlers. Thank you all so much for joining us for another edition of Growlin' and Prowlin'. You are joined once again by myself, Mr. CeeLo, and Panther Nation. I hope you guys are doing well as we are well into the off season, as you guys know. I have been continuing to bring you guys content, and I'm going to be honest with you, I'm trying to not just load things up for daily gratification or just to give you guys something like a lot of creators do. I try to give you as most poignant and actually the most relevant type of content that you possibly can have, considering we've got a long way to go. And arguably one of those that's going to be a conversation for a minute is going to be, do the Panthers have a reliable, legit deep threat on this offense? And I think we do. I just think in a lot of ways Dave Canellis is being very stubborn with guys like Tetairoa McMillan and Jalen Coker, or even Xavier Legette and Jimmy Horn. You know, realistically, I'm going to go through some guys that we can get in free agency, because ultimately, I think we could add another speedy guy to this, this roster, a legit speedy guy. A lot of people say you need a deep threat to be a fast guy. Not necessarily. When you get a guy like T-Mac, Jalen Coker, and even Xavier Legette that can be big body guys that can go up and get jump balls, teams are less likely to leave you in single coverage. I think when we listen to people say a deep threat, they need to say a speed guy, a guy to take the top off of a defense quickly. See, T-Mac and Coker, we even saw Coker on that fourth down play. He beat his man off the line of scrimmage. It wasn't by a large margin, but Bryce made such a beautiful throw on that play. It looked easy. And I think a lot of the problem that we have in Charlotte is Dave Canellis does not trust Bryce enough. See, this ain't just a Bryce thing. This is a Canellis thing. I keep telling you guys this. But for fun, let us go into the free agents that are free. This ain't going to be a very long show, you guys. I've heard a lot of people talk about Alec Pierce, the vertical speed, big playability guy who's got a really physical frame, 6'3", 210, 215 pounds, ran a 4.41 40-yard dash, and has a 40.5 vertical jump. Now his numbers at Indianapolis don't really strike you. They're relatively low. But when you have deep threats, their numbers really aren't that much. I mean, I think Ted Ginn Jr., when we went to the Super Bowl, had an impressive dossier of long catches, but he really didn't have a whole what you call number one. And see, I think, listen, guys, a lot of you guys think that your deep threat guys catch a lot of balls. You know, you got guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. They catch a large group of they have a large group of receptions, but they're not. Very rarely do you have guys like that with 100 grabs, because ultimately their number one objective is to take the top off of defenses so that you can have guys like T-Mac and Jalen Coker work underneath. Now, do I think their next season needs to be more, whether people want to admit this or not, this needs to be more of a committee type effort. Now, a lot of people will say, well, T-Mac showed he was a number one. I don't disagree with that. But we didn't see T-Mac go down the field enough. Not hardly. And to me, that's one of his strengths coming out of Arizona. Guys, I don't know what it's going to take for Canellis to realize he's got a stud down the field. He and Jalen Coker, and even at times Xavier Legette. If you look at one of the shows I did, I had Xavier Legette's highlights playing in the background. There was a catch where Bryce just throws that thing up, and the defender just grabs his shoulder pads while he's trying to lay out for this pass. That's all XL. Because that guy's grabbing him by his shoulder pads, trying to hold him back while he's in mid-dive. XL is a star, you guys. I didn't say superstar. He's a star. In the first part of this season, the Carolina Panthers were pushing him to be a star. And then you get Jalen Coker coming back, and then it was just kind of an in-between where, are we going to make this the XL's team, or Jalen Coker going to be the number two? You pretty much established this team as being Tetero and McMillan's team. That's fine. But to have these question marks when you go to an Atlanta Falcons game where you had no questions where the football was going. And I'm going to go back to the fact that Dave Canella said he did not want to be one of those teams where you're spreading it all over the field. I don't like that. I think when you got talented players, you don't need to sacrifice loading up two guys, and then when one of those guys get hurt, where is it going to go? You got guys that are not going to be ready, and realistically, when you get your tight ends the football some, they block a lot better. When you get your receivers, and you got a trio of big wide receivers, and they block well. From Coker to XL to McMillan. And there's even times out there you see Bryson Tremaine out there blocking. Guys, don't overcomplicate this. This is not something that needs to be complicated. Now, I do like Alec Pierce's size, and he's got that speed. I do like that. But unfortunately for this, he's going to be a guy that's going to be commanding somewhere, from what I'm seeing, he's going to be commanding somewhere around the $15 to $20 million range. And there's a lot of teams out there that not only like his size, but his speed. And so you're not going to get what you think you're going to get. And I'm going to put it like this. The Panthers have to be very finicky about what they do in free agency, because here's the deal. I heard some knucklehead on CBS Sports. They call him the GM. He had the nerve to say, we might want to part ways with Damian Lewis because we would save $9 million on the cap.
Stupid! You some bitches couldn't close an umbrella. You some bitch.
Did this knucklehead just say part ways with Damian Lewis? One of the best guards in the National Football League. See, there's a lot of people, they just say a lot of asinine, ignorant stuff. Don't even know the purpose of this guy. Same thing with Robert Hunt. So I guess because Robert Hunt missed the entire season and he could possibly save us anywhere from $15 to $17 million, we part ways with him. Yeah, and let's go back to figuring out what we're going to do at guard. Guys, you have to ultimately be careful about what you listen to, because realistically, it starts to stick. And you can't listen to somebody who's going to say, arguably your best players need to be cut because they're a cap casualty.
Dumb shit! Dumb shit! Dumb shit!
We had people last year talking about Taylor Moton needs to walk because of his cap number. And then you get Ike Ekwonu going down. I'm like, I'm all for the business side of things. But let's look at it realistically. And there are going to be some things that are going to suffer. The way the salary cap is designed and the way players' agents are getting them paid, it's very difficult to not have a weakness on your team. If you're going to be great in one area, chances are you're not going to be so great here. You have to go into the draft hoping you can knock out your draft picks at least 1 through 3. That would be first round, second round, third round. As well as the Panthers drafted in 25. Princely Emmanuel has left a lot to be desired. This is a guy that's going to have to go into the offseason and he's going to have to prove it. Because realistically, there aren't a lot of pass rushers in this draft that strike my fancy that are going to be there at 19. There are not, and we'll go into that. There is a linebacker that I'm looking at. If the kid out of Georgia is available, he's a good pass rusher. He could be a possible answer there. It's a possibility. That way, Trevin Wallace can continue to get better, and we've got some depth at that linebacker position. And we can do some different things. I think that would be great. I think his name's C.J. Allen, I think it is. But I know we're talking about deep threats in the 2026 class, you guys. But I'm just throwing that out there. We have to address this. And like I said, ultimately, we really don't need to use the draft to do that. And like I said, Alec Pierce is a big physical guy. Very fast, 4.41. And the guy that I think everybody's placing in our radar is a guy by the name of Rashid Shaheed, an elite deep threat and explosive playmaker. Now, the only problem with him is he's a guy that's probably going to be in high demand. Very high demand. Some are saying that his low market value could be anywhere from $8.5 million to anywhere from $15 million. That's like I said with Alec Pierce. Pierce could be anywhere from $15 to $25 million. We don't have that because now we're re-signing a guy like Jalen Coker, whom, in my opinion, should have just as much of a big deal as Pierce. As injuries have been a problem with Coker, and I think that's probably what is going to be a sustaining talk for the Panthers organization in order to get Coker down on the, I would say, cheap side. But Alec Pierce is a guy that's interesting, but I don't think we need to pay a guy $15 million or higher that is more or less going to be the guy that takes the top off of defenses. I'm not just real keen on that. Do love his size, though. But Shaheed presents an elite deep threat that teams have to pay attention to. Now, his route running is something that is to be desired. I will say, it could be something that the Panthers decide to explore, but I don't think they will. I think ultimately, to me, the two guys that I would probably look at would be the Tyquan Thornton out of Kansas City and Dyami Brown from the Commanders. Both of these guys have been exceptionally quiet on their respective teams, especially Dyami Brown. But Tyquan Thornton's one I think we have to ultimately pursue, despite the fact we have Jimmy Horn. And the reason being is you could bring both of these guys in. When one gets tired, you bring the next one in here. I don't think there's not a single down where you don't send Tyquan Thornton as well as Jimmy Horn Jr. down the field. I think both of these guys take over the slot position. The reason why I say that is you have to have somebody on the field at all times that can take the top off the D. Because Dave Canellis ultimately wants to throw the ball short. I don't know why that is. Bryce has done a phenomenal job dropping balls in the bucket. I don't understand what the big deal is. I think you put these guys on the field when you definitely want to eat up the underneath stuff. I don't think you put either of these guys in here when you're trying to go up the field with Coker or trying to go up the field with McMillan or even up the field with Excel. I think you put these guys on the field so when the defense sees them, safeties immediately react. I think you put them out there in blitz positions. I think if you see something, you either call a timeout and see if you can't get these guys on the field. I think when you get elite guys like this on the field and you put them in motion and you're in cover zero, that's another thing. I think defenses are less likely to put guys in straight, what I like to call straight cover zero, because you ultimately got two guys like this or just one guy out there that can just take the top off of a defense. That's what happens. But here's my issue. Thornton ran a 4.28, and I think Dyami Brown is a sub 4 guy. You got guys in Jalen Coker and T-Mac that are deceptively fast, as well as Xavier Legette. I think Legette ran a sub 4.4 as well. This is all on Canellis, you guys. You guys are going to continuously hear me talk about Dave Canellis, because to me, Dave Canellis is holding this team back. This team should be just absolutely ringing up points like a cash register like they were at the end of last season. And this is without Robert Hunt. Now, if he comes out and says that Robert Hunt's absence was a lot of the reason why we didn't go vertical a lot, fine. I could see that happening. Because Austin Corbett wasn't always good. Cade Mays was probably what you might call a serviceable center with, borderline Pro Bowl accolades. He wasn't horrible, but I would imagine this is probably going to be it for him, and that's why I say it's so important, guys. We don't go into the draft looking at receiver. We really need to think about an edge rusher. We really need to think about a linebacker, and we really need to think about a center. No, not a tight end. Do you better damn good if Bryce is ending up on his back and you can't protect him. So all you dudes out there talking about tight end.
What a dumbass.
Is this a hypothetical question?
Exactly.
You fucking idiot.
I do think we could benefit from either taking a guy like Tyquan Thornton or a guy like Dyami Brown. As far as Rashid Shaheed, as I said, there looks that he could possibly get a deal from $15 million a year, something like 3 years, $46 million. I think that's a hefty price. We saw it in the Super Bowl. I know Sam Darnold wasn't completely accurate, but realistically, Dave Canellis has got the weapons already. I'm just giving you some guys that we could possibly look at. And I think Thornton and Dyami Brown are the two reasonably pricey type guys. And I think somebody said something in the comments about Emir Smith Marquez. This was a dude that took the top off of defenses when he was in Charlotte. I know a lot of y'all remember this kid, the one that had the only touchdown in the game against the Bears.
Run.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind going back to this guy if he's available. I don't know if he's available, but yeah. The problem with a lot of these coaches, you guys, and we just have to admit it and call a spade. Canellis is not using these guys properly. He is not. He's not calling the right kind of plays. He's just not. Too many times, Tetairoa McMillan was not getting the ball down the field. T-Mac is a daggum deep threat. Jalen Coker, deep threat. You might not like the way it looks, but when you get teams that are jumping routes, that double move's got to come into play, y'all. And with the big physical receivers that we have, look, one thing we exposed to look, when people were talking about the glaring weakness of the Rams, who exposed that? Who exposed that? You're looking at them. Most corners, you guys, I don't care how good they are, they're going to be smaller than our three guys. That includes XL. And I've got a challenge for Dave Canellis and a challenge for Xavier Legette, as well as Bryce Young. Y'all need to work over the summer. That's not my words. That's just period. Because I believe XL has the goods. And Canellis, how about some packages in there just for him? You got Deebo Samuel on your team and you're not using them. You got a couple of Swiss Army knives on your team. One of them is built like a running back and the other one is built like Jalen Waddle or Jameson Williams and Jimmy Horn. Now, you could go and add Tyquan Thornton or Dyami Brown. Cool. I have no issue with that. The more the merrier. But realistically, you got everything you need at the receiver spot. I just had to throw this in there because it was just too tempting while I'm looking at the free agent market and I'm looking at so many people discuss what do we need to do in free agency. If we can get Tyquan Thornton away from the Kansas City Chiefs, which is going to be a hard deal because even if Mahomes is halfway through the season, who doesn't want to catch passes from Patrick Mahomes? Who doesn't? And Canellis, you got to start throwing it down the field. I'm hoping that Robert Hunt's recovery is going to open up more opportunities for the Panthers to throw it down the field. Because realistically, that's what Bryce wants to do. These short timing passes, you could tell he's not comfortable throwing them. He likes being able to get the ball to guys in open space and make them do the rest. When Bryce is at his best, guys, I want you to go back and watch the Atlanta game and any game where he threw over 200 yards. He likes to get the ball out in front of guys. That's his MO. And people sit there and say, well, I think it's his accuracy. This same CBS guy said that he thinks this is the last year. Why would Dave Canellis put himself in jeopardy here? Because realistically, I'm not saying that owner Tepper would terminate him because he couldn't make it work with Bryce. But I will say this. It's not looking clear as Canellis is attempting to call a lot of good plays for Bryce. Now, a lot of y'all are going to think that's a controversial take, but I'm going to say it like this. When you look at that Atlanta game and you just look at the kind of game plan he called, man, the Falcons looked like a wobbly boxer. Every single time they tried something, guess what? We had a counter for it. Look, Canellis is just going to have to accept the fact that right now we are an offensive-minded football team. We got an elite bunch of corners, and we need to shore up that secondary in the safety room and finally get some linebackers that can actually fill some gaps and bring some lumber to the running backs. That's just simple as that, you guys. And we don't need to run around here talking about drafting another wide receiver. There's speed in the free agent class. Pierce is probably a no-show. Rashid Shaheed, unless he's wanting to come to another contender, which he just got a ring, now he's going to want to get paid. And Tyquan Thornton, 4.28, probably maybe 1.5 a year. Big possibility. Dyami Brown, guy who's just sub 4.3, 4.4 guy, hasn't really hit it yet. But guess what? He's a cheap option. But I like Thornton better. But guys, let me know what you think. Put your comments down below. As well as let me know, do you think the receiving core we have now is sufficient? Do you think maybe we need to involve Jimmy Horn? I definitely do. Which one of these four guys that I mentioned do you like more? Or do you just think we need to stick with the receiving core we have now? I'm okay with that. I would like to see a guy like Tyquan Thornton in that receiver room with his blazing speed, taking tops off of defenses so we can get more underneath stuff and get Teteroa McMillan in open space on those slants, like he's those long ostrich-like strides he gets, and he eats up so much grass. But then I also want to see a guy like Thornton where Bryce just lets that thing go and lets him run under it. That would be scary now, wouldn't it? But yeah, make sure you let me know down in the comments if you think it's a great idea for us to get one of these speed demons, and let me know why. If you're a fan of the show, give me that thumbs up, as well as hitting that subscribe and hitting that bell notification. If you are a first-time viewer or you're a new subscriber, make sure you put your name down and where you are watching from. Make sure you go over to our Facebook page and group, same name, Growlin' and Prowlin', and either join the group or add us as a friend. Finally, go up to my Instagram so you can keep up with all my shenanigans on and off season that I will be caught up in. But until the next time, keep prowling the airwaves and growling out. Keep pounding.